The park was quiet, almost unnaturally so, bathed in the golden-orange light of the late afternoon sun. Children's laughter echoed faintly across the swings and slides, but Lily Smith's giggle was the loudest, the most carefree. She darted after her small, tan-furred dog, Toby, who had darted under a low-hanging tree. Her pigtails bounced as she ran, the edges of her dress brushing against the tall grass. "Lily, don't go too far," her mother, Sarah, called, her voice full of warmth and caution. But Lily was too caught up in the chase. She loved the park, loved the way the wind made her feel like she was flying. Toby disappeared behind a thick patch of bushes, and Lily followed without hesitation. She crouched to peek through the branches, expecting to see her dog wagging its tail and waiting for her. But Toby wasn't there. Instead, she saw a shimmer of something metallic in the dirt, a locket, delicate and small, partially buried under fallen leaves. Curious, Lily reached down, brushing away the leaves. As she lifted it, a sudden sound behind her, a rustle, a snap of a twig, made her freeze. She turned, her small heart thudding, but there was nothing. The park was empty, the swings creaking slightly in the breeze. And then Lily screamed. From the edges of the woods, a shadow detached itself, moving faster than she could comprehend. One moment the figure was behind a tree, the next it was gone, as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. Lily ran, Toby barking somewhere behind her, but when she reached the edge of the trees, there was no one there. Only silence, only the wind moving through the leaves. By the time Sarah and her husband, Mark, noticed Lily's absence, a sense of panic had settled over them like a cold, heavy blanket. They called her name, louder and louder, but the only answer was the rustling of leaves. The park, once cheerful, now felt oppressive, like a trap. Within minutes, neighbors had gathered, phones were out, flashes of light piercing the growing dusk as they searched the nearby trails. Whispers began circulating, some logical, some impossible. Maybe she wandered off? Maybe she got lost in the woods? Others were darker. What if someone took her? Detective Emma Hayes arrived not long after. She was in her mid-30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice every detail no one else did. Her trench coat flapped slightly in the breeze as she stepped onto the scene, her badge glinting faintly under the fading sun. "Calm yourselves," she said, her voice steady but commanding. "We'll find her." Sarah clutched her husband's arm, trembling. It's been 10 minutes, and she's gone." Hayes nodded. "I know it feels like forever, but we'll start with what we have. Was there anyone unusual here? Anyone you didn't recognize?" Mark shook his head. "No, the park's usually empty this time, just us." Hayes crouched by the edge of the trail where Lily had last been seen. She noticed something, a small piece of fabric caught on a branch, frayed at the edges. Carefully, she bagged it. "This might help," she said. As the sun sank lower, the town seemed to darken faster than usual, the trees casting long, skeletal shadows. Hayes moved through the park methodically, taking note of footprints, the faint markings on the ground, and the direction in which the trail seemed to vanish. Nothing made sense, yet everything felt deliberate. By the time darkness fully settled, searchlights and patrol cars swarmed the park. The townspeople, once calm, were now consumed with fear and suspicion. Parents huddled together. Teachers from the nearby school whispered about other missing children they remembered hearing about years ago. Something had changed in the town, something buried under its peaceful surface. Hayes spoke with witnesses, piecing together fragments of the day. One young boy said he saw a man in black near the tree line. Another woman mentioned hearing whispering voices. Each account was vague, inconsistent, but each added to a growing sense of unease. Then came the footage. The park's old security camera, barely functional, had captured something, or someone. A figure, cloaked in shadow, standing at the edge of the playground for a split second before disappearing. No face, no clear details, just a presence that seemed wrong. Hayes paused the footage frame by frame. Something about the figure was unsettling, almost unhuman. Her gut tightened. She had seen shadows like this before, fleeting glimpses that left chills down her spine. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. Someone or something was watching, and it had chosen Lily. That night, the town tried to sleep, but sleep was impossible. Streetlights cast eerie glows through the windows, making every tree look like a lurking threat. Parents triple-checked locks. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a warning. Hayes stayed at the station, mapping out the search patterns, interviewing residents, and connecting dots no one else saw. Her eyes were heavy, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that the figure from the footage was already several steps ahead of them. Then a call came in, a frantic whisper from one of the neighbors who had been searching the woods. "Detective, there's something moving in the trees. I swear I saw her." Hayes grabbed her coat and ran toward the location, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating gnarled roots and fallen branches. She called out, "Lily, it's Detective Hayes. Can you hear me?" The woods were silent, too silent. Then a faint sound. A child's giggle? No, a soft, desperate whimper. She moved closer, heart pounding, senses heightened, but before she could pinpoint the sound, it vanished. Hayes stopped, breathing heavily. Somewhere in the darkness, someone or something was watching. She felt it in her bones, a presence, patient, waiting, calculating. The first night ended with no answers, no Lily, and a town plunged into terror. As Hayes returned to her car, she couldn't shake one thought. This was only the beginning. Someone had taken Lily, and the truth of why and who would terrify them all. And in the park, hidden under the shadow of the trees, the locket she had seen earlier glimmered faintly, a silent reminder that the game had already begun. The morning after Lily's disappearance, the town awoke to a heavy fog that seemed to mirror the mood of its residents, thick, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. Detective Emma Hayes stood outside the Smith residence, clipboard in hand, observing the small crowd that had gathered across the street. Parents whispered to one another, their faces pale, their hands shaking. Every glance seemed filled with suspicion, as though anyone could be responsible. Hayes had spent the night poring over the park's old security footage and compiling witness statements. Something didn't sit right. The figure in the footage, the one caught for only a split second, wasn't just an unknown adult. It moved differently, almost deliberately, like someone who knew the exact way the camera would record it. Inside the Smith house, Sarah Smith clutched a blanket, pacing. "Detective, what if she's hurt? What if she's gone?" Hayes's eyes softened, but her voice remained steady. "We don't know that, but we do know we need to act fast. I need to hear everything you remember from yesterday, every detail, no matter how small." Sarah swallowed hard. "She was playing with Toby, the dog. She ran after him. I swear it was just for a minute, and then she was gone. We called her name. We searched the park. We even went into the woods." Her voice trembled. "But she wasn't there." Hayes nodded, jotting notes. "I need you both to stay calm. The more panic spreads, the harder it becomes to think clearly. I promise you, we will find her." After leaving the Smiths, Hayes drove through the town, speaking with neighbors, teachers, and anyone who might have seen something unusual. As she dug, she began to notice patterns that made her stomach churn. Several parents recalled children disappearing over the past decade, some for hours, some for days. Each time, the incidents were hushed, quietly resolved, or so it seemed. By noon, Hayes was at the local library combing through archived newspapers. Her fingers traced faded headlines. Local child missing, found days later, case closed. Police investigate brief disappearance of young girl. Unexplained child vanishings continue in quiet town. Names and dates blurred together, but one thing was clear: the town had a history it didn't want to confront. Hayes leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. A fog of unease settled over her. Each disappearance shared common threads. Children were taken near the woods. Items were often left behind: a shoe, a toy, a piece of clothing, and each case ended with no real explanation. Someone had been orchestrating this for years, someone with knowledge of the town's every corner. Her investigation led her next to the edge of the forest, where overgrown trails twisted into shadows. Hayes had heard whispers from neighbors about an abandoned cabin hidden deep in the woods that no one dared approach. According to old town records, it belonged to the Carsons, a family that had moved away decades ago after mysterious circumstances. Some said the cabin was cursed, others that it was just derelict. But Hayes had learned to follow instinct, and every instinct told her the cabin held answers. She parked at the trailhead and stepped carefully along the narrow path, flashlight in hand. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the foggy sky. Every snap of a twig made her flinch. Hayes had walked countless crime scenes, but the feeling here was different, cold, personal, like the forest itself was watching, waiting. The cabin emerged through the mist, a dark, decaying structure covered in ivy and moss. Windows were cracked, boards nailed haphazardly over holes, and the door hung crookedly on rusted hinges. Hayes approached slowly, her hand on her gun. She pushed the door open. Dust motes swirled in the beam of her flashlight. The smell of mildew and decay filled her nose. Inside, the cabin was eerily silent. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and old furniture leaned against the walls as if frozen in time. But something caught Hayes's eye, a faint glimmer behind a rotting bookshelf. She moved closer, heart pounding, and discovered a wall covered with photographs. Children, dozens of them, all smiling in pictures taken over the years. And in the center, her breath caught. There was Lily. The wall told a story, a chilling one. Each child's photo was pinned next to a small object, a locket, a toy, a piece of clothing. Hayes realized with horror that these were not random keepsakes, they were trophies. A sudden sound made her spin. A shadow moved near the corner of the room. Hayes aimed her flashlight and gun, but the figure vanished into the darkness, leaving only the cold breeze and the faint whisper of a child's voice. Hayes's mind raced. Whoever did this was meticulous, organized, and patient. They had been operating in the town for years, watching, waiting, and now Lily had become their latest target. Determined, Hayes collected the photographs and objects carefully, storing them in evidence bags. She needed to know everything about the victims, their families, and how each disappearance had been handled. There had to be a pattern. Back at the police station, Hayes spread the photographs across the table. Dates, locations, ages, all pointed to a horrifying reality. The perpetrator had been taking children in a methodical way, always near the woods, always leaving subtle clues to mislead investigators. Someone with intimate knowledge of the town's routines and secrets. As the hours passed, Hayes received an anonymous tip via a crumpled note slipped under her office door. The answers you seek are where no one dares to look. Follow the path, find the truth, but beware, not all shadows are empty. Her pulse quickened. The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic, but the message was clear. Someone wanted her to find something, or perhaps someone wanted her to fail.
Hayes prepared for a second expedition into the woods, this time more determined than ever. She checked her equipment: flashlight, radio, first aid kit, and backup ammunition. The fog had thickened outside, reducing visibility to mere feet. Every tree looked like it could conceal a secret. As she walked the trail again, the whispering wind through the trees sounded almost like voices, calling names, urging caution, daring her to continue. And then, faintly, a sound she would never forget: the delicate, terrified voice of a child calling her own name. "Detective Hayes!" Hayes froze, scanning the darkness. "Lily?" she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. Only silence followed, broken by the occasional rustle of leaves. She moved cautiously toward the sound, every step measured, every sense alert. She stumbled upon a small clearing where the ground was littered with footprints, some small, some larger, leading deeper into the forest. Hayes followed, feeling an icy knot of fear tighten in her stomach. Whoever had taken Lily left clues, almost taunting her. The perpetrator wanted her to find them. Suddenly, she noticed markings on a tree, a series of scratches, almost like a code. Hayes did to examine them, her flashlight illuminating the symbols. They seemed random at first, but then she realized they were directional, pointing toward the cabin she had visited earlier. Her heart raced. It became clear the cabin was not just a storage space, it was a message, a warning, and possibly a trap. The perpetrator was clever, always one step ahead, watching, calculating, and the longer Hayes waited, the greater the danger to Lily. Night fell, heavier than before, and Hayes finally retreated from the woods, knowing she needed a plan. The town was unrestless, fear simmering in every household. She returned to her office, staring at the photographs and markings, piecing together a map of horrors that had remained hidden for years. As she leaned back in her chair, exhaustion clawing at her body, one thought dominated her mind: whoever had taken Lily wasn't done, and the next move would terrify the town beyond anything they had ever imagined.
Detective Emma Hayes couldn't shake the image of the photographs from the abandoned cabin. Each smiling child's face seemed frozen in time, a haunting testament to years of hidden terror. But one thought gnawed at her relentlessly: someone in the town had orchestrated this, and that person knew every corner, every habit, every secret of the townspeople. Hayes returned to the station early the next morning, maps and files spread across the table. She cross-referenced the previous missing children's cases, looking for a pattern. Something jumped out immediately: the timing. All the disappearances had happened during moments when the town's attention was elsewhere: holidays, school events, festivals. Her eyes narrowed as she examined the school rosters from each year. One name appeared consistently in proximity to each victim: the school principal, Gerald Morton, a man universally trusted, respected, and admired by the town. The very thought made Hayes's stomach churn. The principal wasn't just nearby when children vanished, he was always in positions where no one could suspect him. Hayes knew she had to tread carefully. Accusing someone so powerful without concrete evidence could destroy her career and put her in danger. But Lily's life and the lives of others depended on uncovering the truth. Her first step was to interview Morton under the guise of a routine welfare check. She arrived at the school just as students filed out for lunch, the principal's office door wide open. Morton greeted her with a warm smile, hands clasped behind his back. "Detective Hayes," he said smoothly, "I hear about Lily. Terrible news. How can I help?" Hayes studied him carefully, noting every twitch, every hesitation. "Principal Morton, I need to ask a few questions about the children who've gone missing over the years. It's routine, nothing accusatory." Morton's smile didn't falter, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a hint of something unreadable. Of course, I've always been supportive of investigations, anything to help find Lily. Hayes left the office without a confession, but something in her gut screamed that Morton knew more than he let on. She returned to the cabin files, examining every photograph and object again. A pattern emerged. Each child's image had been taken near places Morton would frequent: school events, town meetings, community gatherings. He was always close enough to manipulate the situation, always nearby to monitor. Armed with this revelation, Hayes began planning her next move. She couldn't act recklessly, not when Morton was so ingrained in the town's trust. She needed evidence, and she needed to locate Lily before it was too late. Following the trail of cryptic markings Hayes had discovered in Part 2, she returned to the forest. Each mark, each scratch on the trees seemed like a breadcrumb left deliberately for her to find. She moved cautiously, flashlight cutting swaths through the dark, foggy undergrowth. Her senses were hyper-alert. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig set her nerves on edge. Hours passed, the night pressing down like a living thing. Hayes stumbled upon another hidden path, narrow and overgrown, leading to a small clearing, and there, partially concealed by branches, was a trap door, metal, rusted, and camouflaged with leaves. Her heart raced. This had to be it, the place where Morton, or whoever was behind this, kept the children. She checked her radio. "Back up," she whispered, but there was no answer. Hayes knew she couldn't wait. Every second could cost Lily her life. Drawing her gun, she pried open the track door. A foul, metallic odor drifted upward. The steps leading down were narrow, slick with dampness. Hayes descended slowly, flashlight illuminating walls lined with old crates and tarps. Her stomach turned as she saw signs of habitation: small blankets, discarded toys, and hastily scrawled messages on the walls. And then she heard it, a faint, trembling voice calling, "Detective Hayes!" "Lily!" Hayes whispered, rushing forward. She found the girl huddled in the corner, eyes wide with terror. "It's okay, I've got you," Hayes said, kneeling beside her. Lily clung to her like a lifeline, small arms wrapped tightly around Hayes's neck. But their relief was short-lived. A figure stepped from the shadows, calm, collected, almost smiling. Gerald Morton. "Detective Hayes," he said smoothly, "I hear you're persistent. I'll give you that." Hayes raised her gun, keeping Morton at a distance. "Step away. Let the child go. It's over." Morton's expression twisted into something darker, almost triumphant. "Over? No, detective. This is only the beginning. You see, the town needed guidance. Children are malleable, impressionable. I've been preserving them, protecting them from the chaos of the world outside. And you've walked right into my web." Hayes's heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "This isn't protection. It's kidnapping, torture. You're going to pay for what you've done." Morton laughed, a soft, chilling sound. "You think it's just me? No, the town is complicit. The fear, the secrets, the lies. They've allowed me to do this. And now you're part of the story, too." Hayes's mind raced. She couldn't afford to negotiate. Every second spent talking gave Morton more time, more control. Hayes edged closer to Lily, keeping the gun trained on Morton. "Run, Lily," Hayes said softly, tugging at her hand. "Now!" Morton lunged towards them, but Hayes reacted instinctively, firing a warning shot that echoed through the confined space. He froze, eyes wide with shock. Hayes grabbed Lily and bolted up the stairs, the trapdoor slamming behind them with a deafening clang. Outside, the forest was silent again, but the fog seemed heavier, almost oppressive. Hayes ran towards the road where backup had finally arrived. Patrol cars screeched to a halt, officers jumping out, their weapons drawn. "Detective, what's happening?" one shouted. "Get him!" Hayes barked. "He's dangerous."
Morton stumbled from the shadows, raising his hands mockingly, a twisted smile on his face. "You'll never understand," he muttered as officers apprehended him. Lily's mother and father rushed forward, tears streaming down their faces. Sarah clutched her daughter tightly, sobbing. Mark held them both, relief flooding through him like a tidal wave. Hayes watched the reunion with a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. Morton was caught, Lily was safe, but the darkness he had cultivated in the town could not be erased so easily. Secrets lingered, whispers persisted, and the town would never look at its streets the same way again. As the sun rose, illuminating the forest in golden light, Hayes stood silently. She had won the battle, but the war against hidden evil in the town was far from over. Somewhere, buried beneath the surface, others had watched, waiting, and she knew that the next threat could be closer than anyone imagined.
The town was restless the next morning. News of Lily's rescue and Principal Morton's arrest spread like wildfire, but the relief that should have filled the streets was tempered by unease. Everyone knew something dark had been simmering beneath their idyllic lives, and no one felt safe anymore. Detective Emma Hayes returned to the woods, determined to ensure no other child remained hidden. She wasn't content to rely on Morton's confession alone. The forest had secrets yet to reveal. With backup officers in tow, she retraced the path leading to the trapdoor, carefully noting every mark, every footprint, every anomaly in the terrain. The trapdoor itself had been pried open, evidence bags already in place, but Hayes wanted a closer inspection. Flashlight beams cut through the thick fog as they descended into the underground chamber. The air was heavy with the scent of mildew and metal, an oppressive reminder of the horrors Morton had perpetrated. Inside, blankets, toys, and the remnants of a small, hasty life littered the floor, but the most chilling sight was the wall of photographs Hayes had seen before, now more damning than ever. She counted each one, comparing them to missing children reports. The realization hit her. Morton had been meticulous, but he had overlooked nothing. Every child, every disappearance, every detail had been documented. "Detective," one officer whispered uneasily, "we found a second passage, here, behind these crates." Hayes moved closer, shining her flashlight along the narrow corridor. It led deeper underground, the walls carved roughly into the earth, damp and claustrophobic. Her pulse quickened. Could there be another child down here, another victim? At the end of the passage, a small wooden door, barely more than a hatch, stood closed. Hayes pressed her ear against it. A faint whimper, almost imperceptible, reached her. "Lily?" she called softly. No response, just a shuffle and the sound of tiny sobs. Hayes carefully opened the door. Inside, huddled in a corner, were two more children, younger than Lily, terrified but unharmed. One had a doll clutched to her chest, the other a small stuffed bear. Hayes knelt, offering gentle reassurance. "It's okay. You're safe now. Come with me." As the children rose, hesitant and trembling, Hayes noticed signs of recent habitation, crumbs of food, water bottles, and scribbled messages on the walls. Morton had planned meticulously, ensuring they would survive long enough to be found at the perfect moment. Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted outside the underground chamber. Hayes and the officers rushed back to the surface, finding Morton struggling as backup officers restrained him. His eyes were wild, filled with fury and twisted satisfaction. "You think it's over. This town, it will never be the same. The darkness, it's still here, and you can't save them all." Hayes's hands were steady on her gun. "You're done, Morton. No more children, no more lies. It ends now." Morton's gaze flicked toward the woods, almost like he was signaling something. Hayes's instincts screamed that he wasn't bluffing. She radioed for additional units to sweep the surrounding area, checking every shadow, every tree line, every overgrown trail. Hours later, the forest was silent, the fog slowly dissipating with the rising sun. The children were reunited with their families, tears streaming, embraces tight, relief palpable. For the first time in what felt like eternity, a sense of peace settled, if only briefly, over the town. But Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that something remained hidden, something Morton hadn't accounted for. She returned to the trapdoor, inspecting every mark again. That's when she noticed it. A small locket, half buried in the dirt, glinting faintly in the morning light. She picked it up. Inside was a tiny photograph, not of Morton's victims, but of a young girl smiling, with no record of disappearance in town files. Her stomach tightened. Morton had been meticulous, but could there be another? Someone else? Or had Morton's influence reached farther than anyone knew? The locket was a silent warning, a reminder that evil often leaves seeds even after the gardener is gone. Back at the Smith residence, Lily clung to her mother, her small body trembling with residual fear. "Mom, will he come back?" she whispered, eyes wide. Sarah hugged her tightly, tears streaming. "No, baby, he's gone. You're safe now." Hayes watched from the doorway, heart heavy. Safe for now, perhaps, but she knew better than to believe that evil disappears completely. It hides, waits, and sometimes it strikes again. The town tried to return to normal, but the shadows of the past lingered. Parents installed locks, alarms, and security cameras. Children walked in pairs. Everyone watched each other more closely. The idyllic small-town life was gone, replaced by suspicion and whispered fears. Hayes, however, remained vigilant. She reviewed every file, every case, every detail she had collected over the years. Morton had been only one thread in a web of darkness, and while the immediate danger had passed, the town and its children remained fragile, vulnerable. As she drove through the forest on the outskirts of town, flashlight slicing through the early morning mist, she noticed a faint glimmer beneath a pile of leaves. Curious, she stopped and brushed it aside. It was another locket, identical to the one she had found in the trapdoor, but empty this time. A shiver ran down her spine. Someone had been watching, someone had left a message, and the thought that another child might be in danger, somewhere unseen, gripped her heart like ice. She took a deep breath, tightening her grip on the wheel. She couldn't let fear control her, not now, not ever. The town needed her, and she would find the truth, no matter how deep the darkness ran. The camera pans over the quiet town streets, sunlight glinting off windows, shadows lingering in alleys and backyards. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughs, oblivious to the horrors that had passed. But the town itself feels changed, its innocence lost. And for those who watch closely, the faint glimmer of a locket reminds them that some secrets never truly die. Detective Hayes's eyes narrowed, resolve hardening. This case was over, but the hunt for truth, for justice, was never ending. And somewhere in the shadows, unseen, someone or something was already waiting.